Hello, good morning, class, and welcome to our class for today. So, our topic for today is cultural relativism. Okay, dito po, ang pag-aralan po natin ay yung basic principles of cultural relativism. And then, after that, after we define cultural relativism, then we will go to the advantages and disadvantages of cultural relativism. So before that, these are the learning outcomes or the things that we should learn after we tackle this particular topic. At the end of this class, dapat ma-define natin yung cultural relativism. Then, what is more important is to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of cultural relativism. So, it is your task at the end to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses, but we will not be able to um, evaluate the strengths or to give the strengths and weaknesses without knowing the basic principles of cultural relativism. Now we will start, our class or with this particular topic with a particular story um, about the about comparing cultural practices between Greeks and Colossians. So according to the story, uh, King Darius of Persia was fascinated by different cultures around the world, and then he went to Colossians, and Colossians is, one of the tribe in India, and he saw that, the Colossians, when it comes to their funeral, eat the bodies of their dead, and then and that is the um, that is how they show respect to their dead fathers. So they eat the body of the dead to show respect, and King Darius also went to the Greeks, and the way of their funeral is through cremation. That is the natural, fitting way to dispose the dead. Now, there are two actually different there are two different practices when it comes to disposing their dead, right? So if you see the stories, two different practices, um, but they have when it comes to funeral. But what is fascinating is, when King Darius went to the Greeks, he told the story about the Colossians eating their dead fathers, and the reaction of the Greeks. Actually, they were shocked. Okay, they were shocked. And how can they do these things? Okay, and then when King Darius told the story about the way the Greeks cremate their dead, the Colossians was actually horrified and told him not to tell, this horrifying practice rather. So if you look at this story, uh, you will realize that in one particular practice, different cultures might do different things. Like in funeral, the Colossians eat their dead, and then the Greeks um cremate their dead. So this story is actually um an example if we compare, it is an example of cultural relativism. Okay. Now, what does it mean when we talk about cultural relativism? It says that cultural relativism holds that what is right or wrong, acceptable and unacceptable, is determined by one's cultural moral code. Okay? So, look at the highlights or yung mga highlights po ng word dito, that what is right and wrong, acceptable or unacceptable, ay nakadepende po doon sa moral code ng isang kultura. So, if we look back to this particular story, okay, what is right and wrong for the Greeks when it comes to funeral is cremation. Okay, what is right for them is to cremate the dead. And for the Colossians, what is right for them is to eat the bodies of their dead fathers. So, yun po yung moral code or yun po yung code na meron sila as part of their culture as one society. So, paano ba natin to i-relate when it comes to cultural relativism? So, here, the Colossians actually cannot criticize the Greeks for cremating the dead bodies of their loved ones. And as well as the Greeks actually cannot, the Greeks cannot criticize the Colossians by eating the bodies of their dead because that is the moral code of the Colossians. So, dapat po, we have to use the moral code of the Colossians when we say if it is right or it is wrong. So looking back to this, idea, James Richels in his Elements of Moral Philosophy actually give a very good explanation when it comes to the story of the Greeks and the Colossians when it comes to their funeral. So according to the cultural differences argument, which is given by James Richards, the Greeks believe it was wrong to eat the dead, whereas the Colossians believe it was right to eat the dead. So yun po yung story kanina. So therefore, eating the dead is neither or neither objectively right nor objectively wrong. It is merely a matter of opinion which varies from culture to culture. So even the Greeks um, said that the Colossians are not right, and the Colossians also said that the Greeks' um, disposal of the dead, which is cremation, is a horrifying experience or practice. Uh, the number two says that there is no objectively right nor objectively wrong. Yung sinasabi lang nila is merely an opinion because cultural relativism says that um, we cannot criticize a culture of another or we cannot criticize another culture based on our own culture as or moral code. So so therefore relativism says in effect that there is no such thing as universal truth in ethics. So, wala pong universal truth when it comes to judging right and wrong. Hindi po siya universal, but it is relative. Okay? Relative means what is right and wrong depends upon the belief of a particular culture. So sa kulturang Pilipino, kung ito yung pinapaniwalaan natin kung anong tama at mali, yun yun. Ganon din sa American culture. Kung anong pinapaniwalaan nila, kung anong tama at mali, yun yun. So ang Pilipino ay hindi pwedeng magsabi na tama na hindi tama ang kultura ng ibang kultura or ang paniniwala nila using my own moral code. That is why here, titingnan po natin, magkaiba po ang ethnocentrism sa cultural relativism. So, when we um, criticize other culture as being wrong, using our culture is not cultural relativism but ethnocentrism. Because we judge other cultures based on the standard and values of our own culture. Unlike ethnocentrism, cultural relativism suggests that one culture's values, beliefs, and norms should not be judged through the lens of another culture. We can only judge that different culture based on their moral code, not on our moral code. Because if we do that, then it is ethnocentrism, not cultural relativism. So going back to the story, these are the key principles of cultural relativism. Okay? And ito pong mga ito ay binigay ni James Richards in his book, Elements of Moral Philosophy. Okay, number one. The number one, the first principle of cultural relativism is different society have different moral codes. So iba't ibang society, iba't ibang kultura, magkaiba ng moral beliefs or moral principles or moral codes or yung mga rules or etiquette na sinusunod natin. Like for example, the Filipino society has actually a particular moral codes. An American society or American culture has also a particular moral codes. Ito yung number one. Okay? Number two is a society's moral code determines what is right and wrong, at least within that society. So, looking back to the story of the Greeks and the Galatians, what determines what is right and wrong depends upon the moral code of that society. So, ang Galatians ay okay sa kanila yung pagkain ng kanilang dead bodies, okay, of their fathers. Because this is in accordance with their moral code. For the Greeks, cremation determines what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so that is right thing to do for them, at least in that particular society. Number three, there are no objective standards for judging other cultures. Okay, wala daw pong objective standards for judging other cultures. The other words of objectivity is universal principles of judging a particular culture. Because as we say, there are no universal moral truths. So, wala pong objective standards sa pag-judge ng ibang kultura kasi nga po wala po tayong pangkalahatan o universal moral truths. Dahil nga, what is right and what is wrong depends upon a particular cultural moral code. Okay? Wala pong universal understanding or moral truths na tinatawag. Number 4, the moral code of our society has no special status because it is just one among many. Okay? So wala pong special status. Hindi po natin pwede daw gamitin yung ating moral code ng ating society rather kasi nga po ito po ay isa lang sa marami pang moral code na umiiral sa mundong ito dahil marami pong kultura. So therefore, judging other cultures is arrogant. So we must tolerate them. We must tolerate them. So dahil nga iba't ibang society have actually different moral codes, therefore we cannot judge them. Instead, we have to tolerate them. Okay? Ganon po ang panglimang principle of cultural relativism. Okay? Now, let us go to the advantages of cultural relativism. So, unang-una, it reminds us to assume that our preferences are the only absolute rational norms. Okay? So, we have to accept that of the principle of inclusivity, the principle of respecting the diversity of cultures. So, and we become open-minded to other culture. Hindi po tayo judgmental sa ibang kultura. We are not judging other culture based on our moral code, but open to the possibility that there are other cultures and we explore or we uncover the truth of that culture by being open-minded. So yun po ang pinaka-importanting advantages ng cultural relativism. What about the disadvantages of this particular theory? Uh, ano ba ang disadvantages ng cultural relativism? Unang-una, and these disadvantages are actually given by James Rachels in his Elements of Moral Philosophy. And the first one is, if we believe in cultural relativism, we cannot criticize societal practices that promote harm. Okay? For example, if a particular culture practice cannibalism and headhunting, then we cannot criticize that particular culture even if it is harmful. Because according to cultural relativism, um, what is right and wrong depends upon that particular uh, culture or ano ba ang moral code ng kultura na yan. So therefore, if you came from another culture, you cannot criticize it, even if it is harmful. So there are practices actually around the world or cultural practices around the world na okay lang naman sa kanila but these are actually questionable like when it comes to mutilation and other practices like for example during the time of Nazi or or I don't know how to pronounce that but during the time of Hitler um, one of the harmful practices during that time was to kill the Jews, right? Kill the Jews. And according to cultural relativism, we cannot criticize these harmful practices. Aside from that, the apartheid in South Africa, okay, and the slavery in in USA or around the world that was actually accepted during that time, but in our eyes today, these are harmful practices. So if we believe in cultural relativism, that we do not have right to criticize them even if they are wrong. Okay? So that is the first disadvantage of cultural relativism. The next one is if we believe in cultural relativism, or if cultural relativism is correct, then we cannot criticize our own culture's harmful practices. Ito po, we are basing this on the belief of another culture, but dito sinasabi, even in our own harmful cultural practices, we cannot criticize them. Okay? So if your culture is if the moral code of your culture is um, harmful, then we cannot criticize them. Okay? But this is very problematic because wala pong belief sa isang kultura na perfect. Okay? Pero kung naniniwala ka sa cultural relativism, then you do not have right to criticize it, your own culture's harmful practices. Okay, and this is very important. Number three, if cultural relativism is correct or right, then the concept of societal progress becomes questionable. Okay? Because according to cultural relativism, ito na yung tama at mali according to that culture. Therefore, hindi na natin siya mababali. Yun na talaga yun. Kung ang paniniwala nyo ay you have to bury the dead or you have to cremate the dead, then that will be the basis of your understanding of what is right and what is wrong. Okay? So, hindi na po mababali yun. But, our world is progressing. Okay? Before, merong time na nandoon po yung slavery. Okay? Pero people realized that it was wrong. Then there is a progress when it comes to ideas. There is a progress when it comes to practices. Like women who cannot vote uh, before. And now, women can actually vote. At hindi lang yon, they can even run for a particular office. At marami pa pong mga ideas na nag-progress. So, if cultural relativism is right, therefore, wala nang progress na mangyari. Pero ang nangyari, meron pong progress. So, at the end, the challenges of cultural relativism lies in the ideas that meron daw talagang objective truth or moral truths that can universally apply. So parang sinasabi ni Rachels at the end that it is not about, not following a particular culture or respecting a particular culture because our culture is our identity. So yun po ang katotohanan. Ang kultura, ang moral code na meron tayo ay parte ng ating pagkatao. Pero sinasabi din niya na kahit parte ito ng ating pagkatao, if it is questionable, then we have to question it. So, in this topic, um, we define cultural relativism. We also we also tackle the advantages and disadvantages of cultural relativism. So, ang magiging job po natin is to reflect and to write down the strengths and weaknesses based on our understanding of this particular topic. So, alam ko po na marami kayong maisulat na strength and weaknesses at ito din po ang magiging assignment nyo. Ngayon, alam na natin ang definition ng cultural relativism, then using our mind, we reflect and write down the strengths and weaknesses of cultural relativism based on your own understanding. So thank you so much for attending this class, and I hope that you have learned something. In a simple way, we discuss the this particular concept, and I hope that we learn something and we can apply it to our daily lives because ethics is about um, practical. Okay, practical po ang ethics. We have to apply it in our daily lives. So thank you so much and see you for the next topic. Good morning to all of you.